All right, welcome. This is how to stop your sex and porn addiction before it costs you what matters most. Discover the three misconceptions that keep men trapped and the recovery framework that actually works. I'm Russell Beebe, a licensed mental health counselor and certified sex addiction therapist. So, what you're going to learn today: why smart men stay stuck, the patterns that keep high functioning men trapped despite their best efforts. And two, the biggest three misconceptions about addiction, recovery, and what it actually takes to get free. What rebuilds trust and what that requires, why so many men wait until crisis, what lasting recovery and healing in your relationship actually looks like, and then the recovery framework that we use, a proven system on how to overcome this, plus how to apply it to your specific situation. You're going to learn a lot about sex addiction and porn addiction, and we're going to show you exactly what we do at Wellness Seekers to help men overcome this addiction, heal their relationship, and really get free and really have a nice life. And if you stay to the end of this training, I have a special offer for you. And so you're going to learn a lot here, but at the end, stay till the end because there's a really good offer that I have for you in order for us to maybe help you move forward and overcome this addiction for yourself. So, who is this training for? You're a high functioning man who's married, maybe has a career, and your future is at risk. That marriage or that career is at risk. Your spouse or partner is losing trust in you. You've tried to stop, but you keep going back. You feel stuck in shame, secrecy, and relapse. Therapy, 12-step books, blocking apps haven't solved the problem. You keep trying this. You're tired of hurting the people that you love. You've promised yourself you've stopped countless times. You've tried to stop many, many times, promised yourself you're going to stop and found that you weren't able to do it. You don't want your marriage or legacy defined by this addiction. You're ready to take ownership of your recovery and you want structure, accountability, and real support. Addiction doesn't just hurt the people and the person that is struggling. It doesn't just hurt us, it hurts spouses, children, families, and future generations. So, note about this: if you're single, this training is still for you. While this training often highlights the impact of sex and porn addiction on marriages and partnerships, as relationship damage is common driver amongst people seeking help, this training is equally vital for single men. The principles covered are universal and apply regardless of your current relationship status. So if you're single, dating, divorced, separated, married, hoping to have a healthy relationship in the future, this training is still for you. The goal is not just to save your relationship. So if you're single, it's not a big deal. The goal is to become the kind of man who can build and maintain a healthy relationship throughout his life. So if you're single, pay attention. We'll talk a lot about relationships because this issue has a very big effect on relationships. If you're single, this is still for you. Understanding how addiction impacts intimacy, trust, and vulnerability now will prepare you for to build a healthier relationship in the future. And even if you're not in a currently in a relationship, this is for you. So who's this training not for? Quick fix seekers, somebody looking for an overnight solution without doing the real work. So recovery and overcoming this takes work. You're not ready to be honest with yourself. If you're unwilling to tell the truth about what's actually going on, you're never going to be able to recover from this. You don't want to change. You're not yet motivated to make real and lasting shift for this issue. And then waiting for somebody else, hoping that somebody else will do this work for you. So this is what this training is not for, who this training is not for. So just a note, throughout the training, the phrase acting out, quote, acting out refers to engaging in compulsive sexual behavior tied to the addiction. So when I say acting out, I just mean the sexual behaviors. Maybe that's looking at pornography, maybe that's masturbation, maybe that's soliciting prostitutes for sex. When I say acting out, most men have multiple acting out behaviors. When I say acting out, it's just the behavior, the addictive, compulsive behavior that you're trying to stop. Doesn't necessarily mean sex because there's nothing wrong with sex. And then when I say sexual sobriety, that just refers to stopping the behaviors that are compulsive and destructive. So, what I mean by sexual sobriety is not never having sex again, but rather the behaviors that are destructive and compulsive and addictive that you want to stop. So, just a little bit about myself. My name is Russell Beebe. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, a certified sex addiction therapist. I'm in recovery myself for sex and porn addiction. And this addiction nearly destroyed my life. So, just a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So I remember from a very early age feeling uncomfortable in my own skin. I don't know what it was. In elementary school, I felt this anxiety, this inner turmoil, inner reaction to life that could best describe as maybe generalized anxiety or some kind of anxiety. I just felt uncomfortable in my own skin. And I remember very clearly discovering pornography. I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I was pretty young, and I just remember it was like this enormously um, effective experience where I saw it, and this calm and relief came over me when I looked at it for the first time. And during the time that I was looking at that pornography, everything else in the world, all the worry, all the anxiety went away in my life, and I was able to get out of myself for the first time in my life, and I sort of became an addict at that point. So I would seek it out because it felt good. It helped me get out of myself. And so what happened over many years is that progressed into this this situation where when I started acting out, I couldn't stop. So over the time, like when internet pornography came along, it was just like all of a sudden I could look at all the pornography that I wanted to, and I would get on the internet and I'd click away and click away and click away. And that's what I'll talk about a little bit later when I talk about what sex addiction is, what porn addiction is. We get sucked into this trance-like state. When I started, I couldn't stop. And then over years, I started acting out in different ways, womanizing, and I won't get into some of the gory details of all my acting out, but it started with pornography, and then it progressed to other behaviors that were very, very destructive. And then over time, I was holed up in hotels by the end of my acting out. Right before I got sexually sober, I was holed up in hotels for weeks on end, acting out. My family didn't know where I was and if I was dead or alive. It nearly destroyed my relationship. And it was all because I couldn't stop doing this when I decided to stop. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later. But there's also a mental aspect to this where when a person starts and they can't stop, I would start an acting out spree, a ritual, and I'd go through that. But then I'd emerge remorseful, promising myself I would never do it again. And then at some point in the near future, maybe 2 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 days, 2 weeks, I had obsession of the mind that would lead me back to it over and over and over again. So even if I made the promise that I wasn't going to do it again, I would do it again. My mind, the obsession would bring me back to it, and I'd go back into that cycle of addiction. And I did this for years and years and years. From a very young age, I felt shame, guilt, despair around my acting out behavior, but I just couldn't stop it because I promised myself I was going to stop. And then I would do it again once that mental obsession hit me. So this went on for many years. I got into substance, into drinking and drugs and alcohol, and it all added to my overall addiction issues, and it allowed me to act out. When I discovered alcohol, I was able to act out, feel okay with the acting out that I was doing, and this progressed over many years. And eventually I got into substance use treatment and learned a little bit about addiction, and I learned a little bit about how to recover from that. And I realized, somebody told me, Russell, you don't have an acting out problem, a drinking problem, a drugging problem. You have a life problem, a sober problem. And that changed my perspective on recovery, because what that meant was now I understood that the addiction was just a symptom of a deeper issue. And that if I treated that deeper issue, that inner issue, what I call underlying issues, what happened, and then I learned this, and it was actually what happened in my own experience. I treated my life issue and my sober problem, the reaction to life, that thing, that anxiety that I had when I was younger, and when I treated that, then the mental obsession went away and it became less important for me to act out to get relief. And so that's really at the root of recovery. And we'll talk about that in this training. And now what it's like is that's a win-win for me, because not only have I been able to stop my sexual acting out, and I've been sexually sober for over 16 years, But because I treated my life issue, my life got better. So now my life is second to none. I have an absolutely wonderful life. Whereas before, I was, sort of a high functioning individual. I was a musician. I went to music school and I did all this stuff, but it was always my ability to grow towards my goals and to be the man that I wanted to be was always tainted by all this acting out and recovering from acting out. Now that I don't have the acting out, now that I don't have the mental obsession, I'm able to work towards my goals in life. I'm able to be the man that I wanted to be. I'm able to be the husband, the father. And, when I had jobs, I was able to be the employer. I just the real good person in the community. I'm the person that I want to be. And guess what? I also don't feel that anxiety that I always felt my whole life. I now feel comfortable in my own skin. So I break the cycle of the addiction, but I have an amazing life. So that's basically my story with addiction. So how did I get into this work? This is a funny picture of me with my hair shaved. um, it's a picture of me in an old house that I lived in when I started my private practice as a therapist, and it was an online therapist. And so over time, I got into this work. Because of the help that people had given me. I decided I wanted to give back, and I became a therapist specializing in sex and porn addiction. Quickly realized when I started my private practice that 1 hour a week wasn't enough for the men that I was working for. So therapy, they'd come in 1 hour a week, they'd leave, they'd not do much in between. We talk about some stuff, and there was very little progress. And I realized men needed structure, accountability, and community. We'll talk about that later to actually recover. So I built a program to fill those gaps, designed around what men were actually missing, combined my clinical depth and real world structure. I watched men achieve deeper, longer lasting recovery, built everything they needed in one place. So not just doing therapy once a week, but having the group work and having access to the people that are helping them and having a clear path and curriculum that helps them recover. And that is now what's become the Core Foundation Recovery Program. And we've treated hundreds of men in there for sex and porn addiction, and it's really amazing. We'll talk about the structure of that and what that looks like later in this training. But I decided that just being a therapist in a one-to-one was not working for the guys that I was working with. So I created something a little bit more intensive and a little bit more, I would definitely more effective than when I was doing just therapy. So that's how I got into the work. So, what I've learned from helping 700 plus men, addiction is rarely the real problem. It's a symptom of a deeper, unresolved pain, fear, and coping patterns. I talked about that in my own story. Willpower alone doesn't work. So, just trying to white knuckle this without structure, accountability, and support, motivation alone cannot fix this problem. Most men wait too long. They don't seek help until their relationship or career is in jeopardy, or to be honest with you, and they don't get help until addicts are like this. We don't get help until something really bad happens. So I'll talk more about that a little bit later, but it's important for you to realize like the bottom can always get lower, and so it might be bad for you now, might be kind of bad. It can always get worse. And so I find a lot of the men that come with me, it's like their relationship is on the brinks, or they're about to lose the relationship, or they have lose the relationship, or their career is in jeopardy. Something really bad has happened. So you just want to keep check on that for yourself. If something really bad hasn't happened, now is the time to get help. Okay. But of course, if something bad has happened and you're watching this, we can help you work through whatever the effects of you've done in your life. We can help you work through that. But just realize most men don't get help until something really bad happens. Don't let that be you. If it is you, no problem. We can help you. And then recovery is possible. Long term sobriety and freedom only happen when men get the right help. So it's not just about going in recovery and just frivolously, I'm going to get a therapist and I'm going to kind of ambiguously work on this. I feel very strongly about what we do because I think it actually really helps people not only get sober long term, but have really nice life. And I'll just be honest with you, there's a lot of garbage out there. There's a lot of programs and therapists and people that just have no idea what they do. So it's not just about getting into recovery, it's about getting the right kind of recovery. And so hopefully you watching this, I'm going to be able to explain why this works when so many other takes on recovery don't work. Structure beats motivation. Most relapses are predictable and preventable. The key here in recovery is to get you into a preventative state so that you don't have the obsession to act out and that you're truly free of this. And we'll talk about that. So you've probably already tried everything smart men have tried: therapy, books and podcasts, accountability, blocking software apps, 12-step meetings, trying harder, and white knuckling. So, hey, if you're watching this too and you haven't tried anything, this is your first take on it, good for you. Most men have tried a bunch of stuff and it didn't work. But if you're somebody you're just like, I've never tried anything, I need to do something about this, I've never tried anything, you came to the right place, because we're going to save you a lot of time trying things that don't actually work. Okay. So why doesn't that work? Because most men are trying to solve the wrong problem. Okay, most men are trying to solve the wrong problem. What if porn and sex addiction aren't the real problem? What if the acting out behavior isn't the real problem? Okay, I intimated this a little bit in my story. What if their symptom is a symptom of something deeper? Okay, and we'll come back to this later, but I just want to bring your attention to the real problem, which is something I call RID, RID, the RID stress response: restless, irritable, and discontent. That's the real problem. It's the stress response, that inner reaction to life that brought me back to the behavior over and over again. That's likely bringing you back to the behavior over and over again. And that's the thing that we want to heal in order to really get free of this. Okay. And we'll come back to this in more detail in a minute. So what really keeps you stuck? So these are going to be the three misconceptions of what keeps a man stuck in this addiction. So misconception number one: most men don't actually understand what sex and porn addiction is. So we're going to deep dive into that. I had no idea what this was. Okay. So I'm going to explain it to you. Most men don't. A lot of recovery programs explain it in a way that doesn't make any sense, doesn't resonate with people. So we're going to talk about that. Misconception number two: traditional therapy may not be enough and may be doing more harm than good. We'll talk about traditional therapy, and this coming from a therapist. I'm a therapist saying this: may be doing more harm than good. It doesn't mean stop your therapy. It just means you may have to do something in addition to that at the beginning to overcome an addiction. And then misconception three: recovery is not a life sentence. You can have a wonderful, fulfilling life in recovery. And we'll talk about these three misconceptions. So, misconception number one: most men don't understand what sex and porn addiction is. Stopping the behavior isn't the only objection. I'm sorry, stopping the behavior isn't the only objective. Addiction runs far deeper than the actions themselves. Addiction is a coping strategy. I've talked a little bit about this when I told my story. A way of managing pain, stress, loneliness, or shame. Okay, the acting out behaviors are just a symptom of a deeper issue. It's a coping strategy for a life problem. Most men focus on stopping the behaviors while ignoring the damage being done in their relationship. Okay. So that's one part of this, which is we focus on stopping the behavior, but there's also some relationship healing that has to happen if you're in a marriage, if you're in a relationship and you're trying to save that relationship. Recovery starts by understanding the real problem underneath. I intimated that about the RID response, and we'll talk about that. And just a note: porn addiction is a subset of sex addiction. Both follow the same cycle. So I might talk about sex addiction, I might talk about porn addiction. Porn just falls under sex addiction. So sometimes people just have porn addiction, and they don't have many other acting out behaviors, but most people have other behaviors. So if you're just here for porn, that's no problem. If we work together, we'd look at other behaviors that you might have that are considered under the umbrella of sex addiction. So we can think of it as porn addiction if that's the primary issue that you have, but also if there's other behaviors there, we call that sex addiction. But they're sort of interchangeable, and the solution and the problem and the cycle of addiction are one and the same. So let's talk about what a sex addiction is. So really there's three parts to sex addiction, there's three parts to addiction in general. And I just want to start over at the body side. So what happened? We talk about a mind body illness, okay? So when we start at the body side, what that really looks like is when I start, I can't stop, or it's a trance-like state or a ritual. So basically what happens is a person starts their acting out behavior. Maybe that's sitting down and looking at porn and clicking away, and they get sucked into this trance-like state, and they go and go and go and go and go, until it's over. Okay. And it's very hard to break that once the person is in the acting out. It's very hard for them to break that. So when they start, they can't stop. I would start and hours would go by, and then all of a sudden it's 4 a.m. in the morning and I have to get up at 6 o'clock for work, and it's like, what just happened? It's because I got sucked into the ritual and trance like state. So this is a physical compulsion that takes me through that whole cycle of acting out, and this is progressive. So what happens over time is they need more and different types to get the same effect, just like a drug addict. So over time, it might start with marijuana, then it goes to cocaine, and then it goes to heroin. And then when they're, or if it's alcohol, they need more alcohol to get that same effect. Same thing happens with sex addiction. We start to need to do it for longer periods of time, and we start to need to find different types of acting out behavior. So maybe it's just porn, and then it goes to chat, and then it goes to OnlyFans, and then it goes to video chat, and then it goes to soliciting prostitutes for sex. If it's progressive, this acting out ritual progresses over time, and it goes to some really far depths for a lot of people. Now that may just go to porn addiction for you for now, but just know that it will always progress. And so wherever you are in that progression of the illness, it's going to get worse and worse and worse over time unless you actually do something about it. All right, so let's go over to the mind side of it. So once somebody goes through that cycle, they emerge remorseful, they tell themselves they're never going to do it again, but we have the obsession of the mind. So a good definition of obsession is a persistent and reoccurring thought or idea that's stronger than and doesn't respond to reason. So in other words, I make that solemn oath to myself that I'm never going to do it again, but at some point in the near future, usually a couple of days is really where, like, I'll do good for a couple of days. The men that I work with, they'll do good for a couple of days, and then all of a sudden this thought crosses my mind: it'd be nice to sit down and act out, right? And it's reoccurring thought or idea, and it's stronger than it doesn't respond to reason. So it comes back and it eats away at me and eats away at me, and it grows and grows and grows. And then what I do is I just give into that obsession and I start acting out. And then I get sucked into the trance and the ritual again. So this is the mind part of it, is basically saying, like it says here, when I stop, I can't stay stopped. And the reason for that is I promise myself I'm not going to do it again, but I have a mental obsession that hits me at some point in the near future that eats away at me and eats away at me and grows and grows and grows, even though I told myself I'm not going to do it. And if you hook me up to a lie detector, I'd pass the lie detector. The obsession grows and grows and grows. And then I can't handle that obsession to act out, and I give into it and I start acting out again. That's a cycle of addiction. And I would do this for I did this for years and years and years, and just telling myself I'm never going to do it again. After I would act out, the obsession would hit and I would do it again, and it drove me into the gates of insanity. Why couldn't I stop this? And the truth was, I just had an obsession with acting out that I couldn't say no to, that would bring me back to the acting out ritual and trance over and over again. Now down the bottom we have RID. So restless, irritable, and discontent. We talked about the RID response. So RID is like saying it's a life issue, not an addiction issue. Okay. A sober problem, not an acting out problem. What I learned, as I said already in this training, is that this underlying issue, that the acting out behavior is just a symptom of a deeper issue. So this restless, irritable, and discontent is the underlying issue. And the way that we overcome sex addiction is only not only by stopping the behavior, but actually healing the RID response, healing the underlying issue that is really the deeper issue that drives the addiction. And when we do that, when we heal the RID stress response, and this is a large part of what we do in the program, what happens is amazing. The mental obsession goes away, and then it becomes easier to stay away from the acting out behaviors. So that's exactly, I've been sexually sober for over 16 years. I've healed my RID, I've healed my underlying issues. And guess what? I no longer obsess about acting out. I have urges, I have sexual desire, all that's totally normal, but I no longer have the gut wrenching obsession to sit down and act out, or to go through an acting out ritual for me. Okay. And the reason that has gone away is because I've healed the RID response sufficiently enough. So that's a vital, vital part of recovery. So that's what sex addiction is. A couple more things here. A little bit more about the RID stress response. Without the numbing effects of acting on, men often experience the RID response, often without realizing. So many people don't realize this, and it doesn't have to be an overwhelming mental health issue. It doesn't have to be a legitimate mental health diagnosis. It's just a reaction to life that we tend to have a little bit higher level of restless irritability and discontent. So acting out sometimes is just as simple as wanting to take the edge off a little bit. But in doing so, the addiction, that instinct for sex goes out of control and it becomes an addiction. So, but many times it does come from trauma, negative experiences growing up, or a genetic disposition. Some people are just kind of predisposed to this sort of negative reaction to life. And RID builds up over time, driving the urge to act out for relief. It's the underlying problem that drives addiction. This is why RID is the real problem and not the behavior. Okay. And just a quick slide here on the RID loop, what I call the RID loop, the cycle of addiction. So if you look at number one, this is exactly what I said, the obsession or the preoccupation. It starts with an obsession of the mind to act out, then goes to the second part, which is the acting out ritual, the trance, the actual ritual and trance of acting out. We emerge remorseful, shame, guilt, and with a promise, right, to never do it again. Typically, if you don't have promises yet, you will. If you set out to stop and you find that you can't, you're going to, each time you do it, you're going to promise yourself. And then there's a time gap, some time gap between that promise and number 5 here, which is this RID stress response. I would feel good for a couple of days. Wow, I'm finally stopping. I'm not going to do it again. And then that restless, irritable, and discontent would sort of trickle in, and I'd start to feel that edge of the RID stress response. And soon after that, the obsession would hit me. And why did the obsession hit me? Because I knew that if I acted out, I'd get some relief from the RID stress response. So that's the cycle, the RID loop cycle. So just real quick, what is betrayal trauma? I talk about this a little bit in the context of what sex addiction is, because it's important to realize how this affects your partner. So what many men believe, if she never finds out, nobody gets hurt. This is only affecting me. As long as I keep it hidden, I'm protecting her. Stopping the behavior is all that matters. So what betrayal trauma actually looks like. So when we are wrapped up in our addiction or our porn and sex addiction, what that actually looks like for the partner is they lose trust and emotional safety. So this would be your partner or your spouse. Anxiety and hypervigilance they become, essentially they get the symptoms of PTSD. And if they've sort of made a discovery that you've been acting out, maybe that you've been cheating, you've been looking at pornography, you're doing different things online, then constant questioning and uncertainty. They come to you, what have you been doing? Tell me the whole story. They want to know what's going on, and that's sort of hypervigilance. They have difficulty believing what's true in their own life. They have difficulty believing you. They have emotional disconnection, increased fear, anger, sadness, and confusion. So basically, what they realized was that the partners of sex addicts over time, if they know about the addiction and you haven't been able to stop and you keep harming them with the behavior, what happens over time is they get PTSD like symptoms. So it's really important for you to realize whether she or your partner knows or not, it's negatively affecting them. Okay. And over time, they start to get PTSD, especially PTSD like symptoms, what we call betrayal trauma. And that's especially if they are aware of the behavior and you've tried to stop and it continues to hurt them. So it's important to mention this in the context of what sex addiction is, because it's not just you hurting yourself, it's hurting the people in your life as well. And if you're single, you might be able to reflect on that in the past, how that's harmed past relationships. So betrayal trauma often occurs when a partner discovers something um, about somebody they've trusted and has been hiding significant behaviors, secrets, or information. Recovery is not only about stopping the behaviors, it's also about understanding and repairing the impact of those behaviors and the impact they have had on the people we love. Okay, so misconception number two, why traditional therapy may not be enough. So, just an important disclosure here, don't stop your therapy, do both. So, in other words, keep with your therapy and consider what we have to say here and the things, potentially working with us in our program. If that's something you're considering, you would want to do both. This is about adding what's missing, not replacing what's working. So, when I say traditional therapy may not be enough, I'm not saying necessarily stop. Although I do have men come into my program, they don't do therapy. They get everything they need inside of what we do, and then they actually don't need therapy. On the other hand, I have a lot of men that come in and they work through our program while they're working through therapy, and our program actually enhances the work that they're doing in therapy. So, um, I'm not saying stop your therapy. And I'm talking about therapy. This is a therapist talking about therapy. And as I said before, I stopped doing that in that way because I felt like it wasn't enough for men. So I created the program that I will describe later because when I was working as a therapist, I saw that it wasn't working very well. So traditional therapy offers valuable insight, but for addiction recovery, insight alone is rarely sufficient. So you get a lot of knowledge and understanding of yourself, even a lot of knowledge about some of the underlying issues that I was talking about that are so important. But therapy lacks the structure. It's only 1 hour a week, limited time to build real momentum. Um, 10% retention. What I mean by that is that when you come in and you do talk therapy, you only retain 10 really after you leave that session, you only retain 10% of the information that you gained, and the effect of that. And so we leverage some writing skills, which actually helps you retain 90% of what you're doing when you're actually writing. So talk therapy in and of itself is very ineffective if that's all you're doing is going and talking about some things, leaving, not doing much in between, because you're only really retaining 10% of that. So there's a 3 to 5 year timeline. Without the structure between session, recovery takes far longer. So because of the low retention in terms of the information that you're learning and the integration of that into your life and the lack of structure in between sessions, most sex addicts, most porn addicts, they don't get sexually sober. It takes them forever, and the therapist has to nudge them week after week after week after week. And when I did my certified sex addiction therapist training, they were like, basically, it's going to take 3 to 5 years for your clients to recover from this. That turns out not to be true if you do something different than just therapy. The guys in my program are getting free of the addiction, free of the obsession, and starting the healing in their relationship in as little as 12 weeks. Now, don't get me wrong, recovery, it needs longer than 12 weeks and it's a lifelong thing, but they are having profound experiences of recovery really quickly in the program because we do more than just regular therapy. So that's the problem with therapy. What's needed, especially in early recovery, is not only the inner work that you would do in therapy, but accountability, structure, and community, not just conversation. So if you really think about, when therapy, if I really think about the years of therapy that I did, it wasn't effective. I'd go in, I'd talk about some stuff, I'd leave, I'd not do much in between, I'd come back, I'd update the therapist and on what was going on, and it just was so slow moving and so ineffective. Now don't get me wrong, there's absolutely fantastic therapists out there that probably do better than 99% of the therapists, but in general that's how it works. Very, very ineffective in general for treating addiction for sure. That's why therapists all the time are saying go to 12-step groups, go to a residential program if you're not able to stay sober. It's just because the traditional therapy isn't working very effectively. All right, so misconception number three, recovery is not a life sentence. What I mean by that, it's not deprivation. Recovery isn't about white knuckling through life, constantly suffering. So recovery is not rolling a rock up a hill every single day. It doesn't have to be like rolling a rock up a hill every single day, wanting to act out, your ass falling off with urges, right? Where you just have to like constantly muscle through urges and things like that. That's not Like some people have a perception that that's what recovery is all about. That is not what recovery is about. It's about really getting free of the urges and the obsession. If you do the right type of recovery, you can get free of the obsession of the mind, free of the urges, where sobriety, sexual sobriety, becomes easy. It's about building a life worth living. The real goal is to create the life that you don't need to escape from. Remember, the key to healing this and getting free of the obsession is to heal the rid response, which is actually the same way as saying to heal the underlying issue, or to heal the life issue. And in doing so, life and recovery becomes great, because it becomes not about stopping so much about stopping the behavior, but about having the life that you want and personal development. So my recovery is really not, now I'm 16 years into this, not about me trying to muscle through my urges and stay sexually sober on a daily basis, but literally waking up every day saying, how can I be the best version of myself? How can I improve? How can I exercise? How can I protect my mind? How can I do the things that I've learned in recovery? And I've become interested in recovery and personal development. And doing so, the furthest thing from my mind is to go act out at this point. It's really just about living my life and having the best life that I want. So many people think, oh, I'm going to get into recovery and it's going to suck. I'm going to have urges all the time. I'm going to be miserable all the time because I won't be able to act out. I won't be able to have my addiction. But the truth is, if we treat this right, we're actually treating your life issue, and it becomes a win-win: freedom from the addiction and a fuller, richer, more connected, satisfying life. And I look at my life and I'm just like, the last thing I would want to do at this point is go act out, because I absolutely love my life and I just want to continue improving as a person. And it just has become so easy to stop the behavior. What was so hard for me to stop many years ago is now easy, and my life is absolutely fantastic. And so that's what we help our clients do. So that's misconception, is that recovery is not a life sentence. You don't have to be miserable in recovery, because if we treat this the right way, your life is going to be amazing, in addition to stopping the behavior and getting free of the addiction and healing your relationship. All right, so how we help men break free. These are really the four phases: establish sexual sobriety, stop acting out, and set clear boundaries. We build a recovery routine, a daily recovery structure, healthy habits, and routine. We address the root cause. So that root causes, that's the RID stress response, underlying issues, healing the RID stress response, and then creating lasting freedom, relapse prevention, and sustaining growth long term. Each phase builds upon the one before, and it's creating a structured, progressive path from the crisis of addiction, to lasting freedom. So phase one, establishing sexual sobriety. So what we do here is we just define clear boundaries on acting out behavior. We do what's called a sexual sobriety definition. What are the bottom line, the black and white behaviors that you want to stop long term? We get super clear on that. We look at gray areas, which are things that make you susceptible, situations and behaviors that make you susceptible to acting out. So main purpose of this is to really get clear about what's okay, what's not, establish what sexual sobriety. It's not about stopping sex, it's about stopping the behaviors that are destructive. So we reduce chaos and instability in daily life. We stop the behaviors that are threatening your relationship. So that's really important. If you're in a relationship, right, to be able to have a clear boundary on sexual sobriety and to share that with your partner, to say, here are what my boundaries are, can really help the healing and start rebuilding trust with your spouse or partner, um, healing betrayal trauma. And so throughout the whole program, we talk a lot about betrayal trauma if you are in a relationship, because it's important to understanding what betrayal trauma is, understanding what the sex addiction is, knowing what the addiction is, knowing what your boundaries are with that, your sexual sobriety definition, and then having practical tools for starting your own recovery, and also being able to have clear boundaries that you can communicate with a partner. This creates safety for both partners through improved communication. So that's part of it. Sobriety is a foundation. Everything else is. So the very first thing we do is get clear. And there's more to it than this. There's denial breaking exercises that we do, and you'll get a real clear picture of how this is affecting other people in your life. You'll get a clear picture of why it's so important that you need to establish sexual sobriety and get sexually sober long term. But the main point here is that you define what sexually sober is so that you can move forward knowing clearly what those boundaries are. Phase two, we build a recovery routine. So these are daily recovery habits, consistent daily practices that reinforce sobriety and self awareness. Recovery assessment, we do regular check ins to evaluate wellness urges and growth areas. We actually do an assessment. So we take a look at your overall recovery health and your overall wellness in general. And what happens out of that is we build out a written recovery routine, which basically says, what do I do in the morning? What do I do in the afternoon? What do I do at night? What do I do on a daily basis? What are the things that I do on a weekly basis? Because recovery is a lifelong thing. And we want you to build the positive habits for recovery that will support that recovery. Weekly recovery structure, predictable weekly rhythms that create stability and progress, urge management and accountability tools, and support for navigating high risk moments in real time, especially at the beginning. Now, over time, you're going to get free of those urges and that obsession. But at the beginning, it's really important as part of the recovery routine to be like, when I do get urges to act out, the thing that would lead me back to it over and over again, what am I going to do this time? What am I going to do differently? And there's tools that we teach you inside the program to get through those urges. Phase three, address the root cause. We've talked a lot about this, but we explore the underlying emotional issues that drive the addiction, identify unhealthy coping patterns developed over a lifetime, examine fear, false beliefs, and core wounds, create a life narrative that reframes your story, use a unique mechanism of therapeutic writing to process what talking alone can't reach. I talked earlier about how writing in black and white, you retain much more of that information. So what we do is we bring you through a series of questions that you ask yourself and written processes that really start to get to the root core of the RID response or the underlying issue, what's actually going on. And in that self-awareness and in that the processing of that self-awareness, that starts to heal and change. And we start to think better. We start to have less fear. We start to trust ourselves and we start to feel better. So fear and false beliefs are a really big part of that. But in that spotlight of self-awareness, it starts to transmute and we start to change and feel differently. And guess what? We start to feel much better. And the RID response goes away and we get free of the mental obsession. And then phase four, creating lasting freedom. So once a person has stopped the behavior, they're free from the obsession. That happens very quickly if you do this right. They're starting the healing in the relationship. What's going to help them do that long term? So we have personalized relapse prevention plan, specifically tailored to you. This builds on the recovery routine, right? What do you have to do long term in order to maintain this? So that long term sustained abstinence, not just about getting sober for a short period of time, is about getting clear on the behavior, stopping, getting free of the obsession, and then sustaining that long term. If you're really in recovery and you really struggle with this addiction, you're going to need to do certain things every single day, every single week for the rest of your life. The good news is, like I said, that's not a life sentence. It's all around personal development and wellness. So the good news is that if you do that, you're going to have an amazing life. But we want to be very clear on what exactly is it that I need to do long term to maintain this. And you become the man you want to be, free from acting out and free from the obsession, living as the husband, partner, and the father you're meant to be. So again, phase four, what do you need to, once you're in a good place with the addiction, what do you need to do long term to maintain that? Whether you continue working with us beyond the initial program or not, what do you have to do long term? And we can help you with, we do this as phase four in the program. All right, so here's the recovery gap. Most men find themselves stuck between two extremes, neither of which fully serves their recovery. We talked about traditional therapy, valuable clinical insight, only 1 hour a week, limited accountability between sessions, little day-to-day structure, slow moving. That's therapy. On the other hand, there's residential treatment. So a lot of times therapists be like, hey, you're not getting results working with me. I need you to go to residential treatment, right? Intensive support and structure, which is good in residential, high level of accountability, which is good, often costs tens of thousands of dollars. When I say tens of thousands of dollars, I'm talking like 40, 50, 60, $70,000 for a 30-day residential program that doesn't take insurance. Super expensive, requires significant amount of time away from work and family, and not practical and necessary for most men. So you go away, you're kind of like at a retreat. Most men that I not most men, but a lot of men will go to residential. They pay $70,000 for 30 days and then they leave and they relapse the day after because they've been in an unrealistic environment. Anybody could stay sober for 30 days at kind of a retreat style place, right? Um, but they didn't learn how to get recovery in their home environment. So my program is online, and you get to recover, and you get the intensity of this of something more intense than therapy without the cost and the unrealistic setting of residential treatment. So most men fall into the gap between these two options, which without with without enough support to recover, but without a reason to go to residential treatment. You know what I mean? Like most men would be like, no way, I'm not going to go spend $70,000, right? So neither of these two sides work very well. My program falls in between where it's more intensive than therapy, way less expensive than residential treatment, but provides some of the same supports that residential treatment gives, right? So there we have a different approach. We created a program to bridge that gap, giving you more than just weekly therapy without requiring you to put your life on hold, right? When you go to residential treatment, you're putting your life on hold, okay? So more support, multiple touch points each week, not just 1 hour, more structure, a proven framework with clear steps and daily guidance. We have a curriculum that brings you through a step-by-step recovery process that helps you recover from this. So it's not just groups and one-to-one coaching and talking about stuff, but a structure and a curriculum that you go through in between groups and sessions and things like that. Okay. Direct access, coaching availability when you actually need it. So with a therapist, you might be able to reach out to them, but really it's once a week. With what we do, you have, you know, basically 24/7 access to the people that are helping you, or at least 7 days a week you do. Real life integration, staying present in your work, family, and daily life while you recover. So you're doing this, and it's easily able to do this while you work, while you have family life, while you're busy. You're able to do this. So that's the gap that we bridge in helping people. What we commonly see happen with people that work with us, sobriety they never thought possible, men achieve what once felt completely out of reach. Relationship begins healing. Trust starts to rebuild as a consistent actions replace empty promises. Shame loses its grip. Confidence returns. Men become more present, more engaged, more alive. Basically, what happens here is they stop the behavior. They get free of the mental obsession. They start to feel better in their life, and healing in their relationship starts. Okay. So recovery stops being about avoiding relapses and starts becoming about actually living. Okay. These are real messages from people in the program. We blurred out their names. They also gave us permission. Hey, Russell, I hope all is well. And you can just see in here, today is 1 year of sobriety, no porn sites, no prostitution sites, and texting and talking. Um, you can just read these. It's really amazing. My wife and I had a great conversation Thursday evening and came to a place where we can have civil conversations. Not sure how long it'll last, but we are 3 days and counting. Yesterday we went together for the entire day. No triggers, no issues. So there's healing in the relationship here. Afternoon, everybody wanted to get on today's call, but was very busy. If you put in 100%, you'll get 100% out. And you can just see all these wins here. We have hundreds and hundreds of screenshots of people coming in and being, I'm so grateful. I'm a year sexually sober. My relationship is better than it ever has been. So grateful for your program. Real, actual results that people are getting in the program. So the goal is bigger than sobriety, not just stopping the behavior. The goal is becoming the kind of man who no longer needs a behavior to cope with life, repairing the damage. Addiction hurts the people closest to us, and real recovery addresses that damage head on. Becoming the man you want to be remembered as, the husband, the father, the grandfather, and a man whose legacy is defined by love, not by this struggle. Okay. You don't rise to the level of your motivation, you fall to the level of your system. So why most men stay stuck? Most men don't fail because they don't want recovery. They fail because they're trying to recover with an incomplete system, or they wait until their spouse is ready to leave or something really bad happens, by which the point the relationship damage has compounded for many years. The cost of waiting is almost always higher than the cost of getting help now. Okay, so that's just something to think about. Common reasons men stay stuck: they're trying to do it alone, they rely on willpower, no support when urges hit. Remember, in our program, we have daily support in there, so they know, and a recovery routine. They know what to do when those urges hit. Not addressing the root causes, that's a huge thing. If we don't address the rid response, you're not going to recover from this. Giving up after setbacks. So why so many men wait until it's too late? Things aren't that bad as things they tell us. If I can handle it on my own, I'll deal with it when life slows down. My wife doesn't know, so it's not really affecting anyone. I'll stop after this one and I'll get it together tomorrow. Secrecy increases, emotional intimacy decreases, trust erodes, connection weakens, the behavior escalates, months turn into years, right? And then eventually there's a discovery, a separation, an ultimatum, loss of trust, loss of job, realizing years have been lost. And all of a sudden, that's when they get help, right? So if you're listening to this, you don't have to wait that long. Like I said earlier, the bottom can always get lower. The damage often starts long before the crisis becomes visible. All right, so the hidden cost of waiting. Most men never calculate how much they spend on acting out, the secret purchases and subscriptions, lost production and focus, financial strain caused by relationship conflicts, long term cost of staying stuck. What if the money was working for you? That money that you spend on acting out was working for you instead, right? Your marriage, your family, your future, your retirement, your investments, your peace of mind. Many men spend thousands each year feeding the problem while telling themselves they can't afford recovery. Real question is, whether you can afford the real question isn't whether you can afford recovery, it's whether you can afford not to invest in your recovery. So what successful men do differently: follow a proven framework, build daily recovery habits, get accountability and support, address root causes, stay engaged long term. Okay. So, once again, everything you need is in one place with what we do. Most men are trying to recover together on their, you're trying to piece together recovery on their own. Therapy here, a podcast there, a meeting occasionally. Nothing is connecting, nothing is coordinated. Our program was built specifically for men who want to stop the behavior, and rebuild trust at home, with every component working together, everything that you need in one place. Okay, so what you get inside of the program: step by step online curriculum, multiple weekly group coaching calls, dedicated recovery coach is somebody that will work with you through the duration of your stay with us, daily message support, and long-term recovery planning. We talked a bit about that earlier, but those are all the components. So everything is in one place. A complete recovery system: education, structure, coaching, support, accountability, and community. That's why we built this program: provide that structure, support, accountability, education, and community that most men are missing, delivered in one integrated system designed specifically for this work. So what are your next steps? There's really two options here. One, you could implement what you learned here. You learned a bunch of stuff. You could go and implement this on your own. And that might, take what you learned today. There's nothing wrong with that. This training will give you a real foundation to build on, and you've likely learned a lot of stuff, and you can go try to implement that on your own, right? Or option two, get professional help. Recovery is not one size fits all. If you'd like expert help and help identifying what keeps you stuck and build a personalized plan, I'd like to invite you to schedule a confidential recovery strategy session. Now, you'll see a link or a button around this video. You can use that link or button near the video to apply and book your call. During this call, we'll discuss your situation, identify obstacles, create a personalized recovery plan, and determine the fastest path forward. And if we're not a fit, we'll send you a personalized plan just for showing up. All right. On this call, we'll learn about your situation, identify what keeps you stuck, create a personalized plan, determine your next steps. Okay. Who this call is for: men who are serious about changing, not just exploring options, men whose relationships are suffering and who are really want to do something about it, men who are ready to take action and willing to be honest, men who want a clear path forward and who are willing to follow it, men who have the resources to invest in a real solution, men who will show up, be humble, open, and honest and open to feedback, men who know they need to make a change before they lose something irreplaceable. Who's this call not for? People that are just looking for a quick fix, people that are just looking for free coaching. If you have a severe mental health issue, that probably not going to be a good fit for what we do. Active drug or alcohol dependence, something that requires detox, that's not going to be a good fit, because you're gonna if you need detox, you need to go to detox first, and then you can come back to us. And then if you're not able to engage online, program requires Zoom participation in curriculum in a digital format. Okay. Our promise to you: if we're a fit, we'll walk through the program options together so clearly, so you can make the best decision for yourself. If not, no problem at all. We'll point you towards other resources and still send you a personalized recovery plan. And just a note on confidentiality: we understand that discussing sex and porn addiction can feel deeply uncomfortable. Your recovery session is conducted privately. No one will know you booked unless you choose to tell them, and everything you talked about will be kept in high confidence, right? My recovery advisors are all people that understand that, and then some of which are actually in recovery. I'm in recovery. We understand that. Many men we work with are business owners, executives, doctors, and attorneys. Privacy is a top priority for them, so our team discusses these issues every day. There's no judgment, no shame or embarrassment. Okay. And we do have limited availability. So what I mean by that is every week my recovery advisor has only certain spots available for these calls. So we can only open a limited number of calls each week to ensure every man gets full attention in these situations. Please, please, please only book if you're serious about getting help and exploring your options. We ask that you respect the time set aside for you and show up. So only book if you're serious about potentially working with us, and only book if you're actually planning on showing up to this call. Doesn't mean that you're going to work with us, but if you show up to this call, you're going to learn a ton. You're going to get a recovery plan out of that that you could implement on your own if you wanted to. And we'll talk about options. If we think you're a good fit, we'll tell you that. If not, we'll tell you that, and we'll point you in the right direction. So book your recovery strategy session at the link or button near this video, somewhere around here. Down in the description, there's a button where you can go directly to our application, and it's a quick application. We answer a couple of questions and it takes you to the booking schedule where you can schedule your call. So if you're ready to stop the behavior and rebuild trust, personalized recovery plan, clear next steps, confidential recovery session, true freedom is possible. And again, limited openings available. So be sure to book that now. Use the link or button around or near this video. All right, very great doing this training with you. Every year stuck is another year lost with people who truly matter. Your future, your marriage, and your legacy are worth protecting. So schedule a call. We'll talk soon, and we'll get you headed in the right direction with your addiction and your recovery. Thank you.